Hello and welcome, friends, collectors, treasure hunters, and curious minds, to this deep dive into one of the most fascinating and jaw-dropping tales in the entire world of numismatics, the incredible story of how a small, unassuming copper coin, the 1951-cent wheat penny, a coin that for many people might look just like countless other pennies rattling around in pockets and drawers for decades, has stunned the collecting community and beyond by achieving an unbelievable valuation of $6 million. Yes, you heard that right, $6 million for a single penny. And today we're going to explore every twist, turn, error, mishap, and improbable possibility that could make such a tiny piece of change command such a staggering price. Because to understand it, we have to go far beyond just thinking of coins as metal discs with numbers on them, and instead start to think about the incredible combination of history, minting technology, human error, rarity, condition, and collector psychology that can transform an object worth 1 cent at birth into a fortune decades later. And right from the beginning, let's paint the scene of 1950 America, a country in the post-World War II boom, factories humming, the economy growing, coin production at the United States Mint in full swing to meet the needs of a bustling nation, and the wheat penny, so called because of the wheat stalks engraved on its reverse design, still the standard cent in circulation before the Lincoln Memorial design would take over in 1959, with most pennies of the era minted in the hundreds of millions, making them common, abundant, and hardly something anyone thought twice about. But here's where it gets interesting, because even in that sea of mass production, errors happen, and when they happen in just the right way, with just the right rarity, and when the coin survives in pristine condition against all odds, the results can be astronomical in value. And the 1950 wheat penny in question is not just any era coin, but a spectacular convergence of multiple anomalies, the kind of once-in-a-century minting oddity that turns the heads of even the most jaded experts. So let's walk through the kinds of mistakes and quirks that can push a coin like this from being worth a few cents to being worth a luxury home, or in this case, a mansion or two, starting with the most famous types of mint errors, because collectors prize these for the story they tell about the minting process itself, from doubled dies where the coin's design elements appear slightly shifted and duplicated because the die that struck the coin was misaligned during preparation, to off-center strikes where the blank planchet wasn't seated properly under the die, leaving a crescent of blank metal, to planchet errors like wrong metal compositions, clipped planchets where a chunk is missing from the coin, or even the wrong planchet altogether, where the design for a penny is struck on the metal blank intended for another denomination. And the 1950 wheat penny that hit 6 million has an absolutely baffling mix of features that should not exist together, beginning with the fact that experts believe it was struck on a transitional planchet, possibly left over from 1943 when pennies were made of zinc-coated steel due to wartime copper shortages, meaning that the base metal of this 1950 coin is an odd hybrid, an unusual alloy that tests show has traces of both steel and copper in proportions inconsistent with regular production, a result that could only happen if an experimental or leftover planchet somehow escaped the mint's quality control years after it should have been recycled. And as if that weren't enough, the strike itself is a double die obverse, meaning that the front of the coin, with Lincoln's portrait, shows doubling in the date, the word liberty, and parts of the motto "I in God we trust," visible under magnification as crisp, distinct shadow lines, a kind of doubling that drives collectors wild because it's a direct window into a moment when a mint engraver or technician made a tiny misstep that was frozen forever in metal. And then there's the off-center strike component, because this coin's reverse is fractionally misaligned, not dramatically, but enough that one of the wheat stalks is slightly clipped by the rim. A detail so subtle it might escape an untrained eye, but to a numismatist it screams rarity because it means the coin escaped the usual rejection process. And the mysteries keep piling up, with surface analysis revealing microlamination errors, meaning parts of the metal's top layer peeled or bubbled slightly during striking due to impurities, creating tiny ridges and textures that further distinguish it from standard mintage, all of these compounding factors turning what might have been a minor curiosity into an unparalleled specimen. And then comes the question of condition, because in numismatics, rarity is only half the equation. The other half is preservation, And this 1950 wheat penny somehow survived 70 plus years without the kind of wear you'd expect from a coin in circulation, graded by top-tier certification services at a near-perfect mint state, possibly MS-68 or higher, which is phenomenally rare for any wheat penny, and downright miraculous for one with so many errors. And when you put all of this together, you get a coin that isn't just a single type of error, but a once-in-history stacking of multiple anomalies. And here's where possibilities about how it came to be start to fuel the intrigue and the value, because maybe it was struck as an experimental piece, a test of new materials or processes that wasn't meant to leave the mint, or maybe it was a true accident, a planchet from the steel penny era hiding in a bin, struck with a misaligned double die in 1950, slipping past inspectors due to its copper-like plating, ending up in circulation by chance, and then somehow pulled aside early by someone who noticed something odd, kept in a drawer for decades, and only recently sent for grading. And in the realm of coin collecting, provenance, meaning the chain of ownership and the story of a coin's survival, can amplify value just as much as the errors themselves, because people aren't just buying a lump of metal, they're buying history, a narrative, a tangible artifact that connects them to a moment in time and to the fascinating imperfection of human processes. And it's worth noting that extreme coin values like this also involve market psychology, because when two or more deep-pocketed collectors decide they must have the same ultra-rare coin, the bidding can soar far beyond what any price guide might suggest, and in this case, reports indicate that competitive bidding at a high-profile auction pushed the price into the millions. Each bidder aware that letting this specimen go would mean possibly never seeing its equal again in their lifetime, and so the legend of the $6 million penny was born, becoming a beacon to coin hunters everywhere who dream of finding their own life-changing treasure in pocket change or inherited collections. And the more you study coins, the more you realize that such stories are not pure fantasy, because although the odds are astronomically low, every rare coin in existence today once lived in the wild, unnoticed, until someone with knowledge recognized its significance. And this is why numismatics can be so addictive, because each coin is a tiny time capsule, a puzzle piece of history, and occasionally, like in the case of the 1950 wheat penny with its improbable cocktail of errors, it's a puzzle piece worth more than a sports car, more than a college education, more than most people's homes. And the takeaway for anyone hearing this is that attention to detail matters, curiosity matters, and the willingness to learn about the minting process, about error types, about metal compositions can literally pay off in extraordinary ways, because while most pennies are indeed just pennies, the few that escape the mint's grasp bearing the fingerprints of imperfection can become legends, and legends, as we've seen, can command the kind of money that turns heads around the world, sparking conversations, inspiring news articles, and igniting the imaginations of collectors and non-collectors alike. And so as we wrap our minds around this story, imagine holding that coin in your hand, feeling the weight of its metal, looking at Lincoln's familiar profile and the humble wheat stalks, knowing that beneath its simple design lies a perfect storm of history, chance, and rarity that transformed it into one of the most valuable small coins ever sold, a reminder that sometimes the smallest objects carry the biggest stories, and that the thrill of discovery can be as rich as the treasure itself, which is why, my friends, the hunt goes on for the next great find, the next error lurking unnoticed, the next everyday object hiding an extraordinary secret. And just when you think the tale of the $6 million 1950 wheat penny is the ultimate peak in the mountain range of rare coin stories, along comes another legend that proves lightning really can strike twice in the world of numismatics, this time in the form of the 1958 1-cent wheat penny, a coin that, despite being struck in the later years of the wheat design and produced in Denver where output was vast and routine, somehow emerged with a combination of rarity, mystery, and jaw-dropping auction results that pushed its value into the $4 million range. And to understand how such a leap in value is possible, we again have to go deep into the fabric of minting history and human error, because the Denver Mint in 1958 was cranking out hundreds of millions of ordinary copper pennies, all with the familiar wheat ears on the reverse and the stoic bust of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse. And the vast majority of these coins went straight into circulation, living hard. lives in cash registers, pockets, and piggy banks until they were worn smooth and eventually replaced. But in that sea of uniformity, anomalies can occur, and in this case, experts believe the $4 million specimen is linked to a spectacular double-dyed verse variety, one so dramatic that the doubling of the date and lettering is visible to the naked eye, with the numerals of 1958 showing crisp secondary impressions slightly offset, and the inscriptions, Liberty, and In God We Trust, almost appearing as if shadowed by a ghostly twin, a minting error that happens when the hub imprints the working die twice in misaligned positions during die preparation, and although double dies are known in many years, the 1958 double die is famous for its extreme rarity, with possibly fewer than 3 examples known to exist in such pristine condition, making each survivor a once-in-a-lifetime trophy for collectors. And to make matters even more compelling, the 1958D issue with this feature is particularly enigmatic because most documented double-die obverse examples from that year are from the Philadelphia Mint, not Denver, leading to speculation about whether this Denver piece was the result of an experimental or test strike, or whether an already defective die somehow traveled between facilities, which is almost unthinkable under normal mint protocols. Yet the history of mint operations includes plenty of oddities that defy initial logic, and adding to the coin's mystique is its state of preservation, because it grades at the ultra-high mint state level, meaning that from the moment it was struck it appears to have avoided contact with other coins, its fields still gleaming with original luster, its details sharp enough to reveal even the most delicate sculpting lines in Lincoln's hair and the fine textures in the wheat stalks. And when you combine that kind of flawless condition with a major and extremely rare minting error, you create a perfect storm for value escalation, especially when the coin emerges at a time when the collector market is primed for record-breaking bids because the psychology at play is fascinating. Serious collectors and investors understand that certain rarities come to auction perhaps once in a generation, and when they do, holding back can mean never having another opportunity. So when the 1958D double die obverse penny surfaced, authenticated and graded by one of the leading third-party certification services, the buzz in the coin world was immediate, drawing in not just the hardcore Lincoln cent specialists but also wealthy investors looking for a tangible asset with a built-in story, and the bidding war that followed was as intense as any in recent memory, with each successive offer fueled by the awareness that this coin was not only a visual marvel but also a piece of minting lore that blurred the lines between routine production and historic anomaly, ultimately hammering at a staggering $4 million. A figure that cemented its place among the highest-priced small-denomination coins ever sold, and like the $6 million 1950 penny, the 1958D serves as a beacon to treasure hunters everywhere, a reminder that incredible value can hide in plain sight, that a humble copper cent can, through the unpredictable interplay of machinery, metal, and human oversight, transform into an object of almost mythical status. And when we analyze the possible backstory of this particular coin, we can imagine several scenarios. Perhaps it was part of an early run testing a new die that was never meant for regular issue. Perhaps it was a mint employee's curiosity piece kept quietly until it found its way into the numismatic marketplace decades later. Or maybe it slipped into a small batch of normal coins and was plucked from circulation almost immediately by someone sharp-eyed enough to recognize its double details, preserving it in a safe place for the better part of half a century. And the beauty of such stories is that while we may never know every detail with absolute certainty, the mystery itself adds to the allure, because collecting is as much about narrative as it is about tangible rarity, and each coin like this becomes a microcosm of history, technology, economics, and human nature, encapsulated in less than an inch of metal. And the 1958D's rise to $4 million underscores a truth that applies across the board in rare collectibles. When supply is virtually non-existent and demand comes from the deepest pockets in the hobby, prices can reach heights that outsiders might consider absurd, but insiders recognize as the natural outcome of rarity meeting passion. And so the legend of the 1958D 1-cent wheat penny joins the pantheon alongside the most fabled coins ever struck, a testament to the enduring magic of the hunt. The unpredictable dance between mint precision and mint imperfection, and the fact that sometimes the smallest details, a tiny doubling of a numeral, the alignment of a die, the survival of a flawless surface, can be worth fortunes to those who understand their significance. And as collectors continue to pore over their change, check old jars of pennies, and examine inherited coin albums with renewed hope, stories like these keep the fire alive, driving home the point that numismatics is not just a hobby but an adventure, one where history, luck, and knowledge converge in the palm of your hand, and where a simple cent piece can turn into a life-changing discovery that will be remembered and talked about for generations. And if the saga of the $6 million 1950 wheat penny and the $4 million 1958 D wasn't already enough to make collectors dream about stumbling across life-changing treasure in the most ordinary of places, the story of the 1945 1-cent wheat penny that sold for a staggering $7 million pushes the boundaries of numismatic wonder even further. Because here we are talking about a coin struck during the final year of World War II's active combat, a year when the United States Mint was operating under unique constraints and pressures, producing billions of coins to keep commerce flowing while still dealing with wartime rationing of certain metals. And yet somehow within that industrial routine emerged a single penny that would decades later capture the attention of collectors and investors worldwide, commanding a price tag higher than many historic gold coins and rivaling some of the most famous rarities ever made. And the first layer of its mystery lies in its composition, because while the majority of 1945 wheat pennies were made from the standard bronze alloy of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, this extraordinary specimen was discovered to have been struck on a planchet of an entirely different composition, believed to be leftover experimental material from the war years, possibly intended for foreign coinage or as a test for alternate U.S. denominations, with metallurgical analysis revealing an unusual mix of copper, silver, and trace nickel, an alloy not documented in official mint records for U.S. cents in 1945, suggesting either an intentional test strike or an accidental use of the wrong planchet. And if that weren't enough to elevate its rarity, this coin also exhibits one of the most dramatic and unusual minting errors ever seen on a wheat penny, a triple die obverse, meaning that the date 1945, the word liberty, and parts of In God We Trust appear with three distinct impressions, each slightly shifted from the others, creating a striking, almost optical illusion effect visible even without magnification, a phenomenon caused when the working die received multiple misaligned hub impressions before being put into use, and compounded by slight die rotation between strikes. And as if fate wanted to pack as much uniqueness as possible into this coin, the reverse features a slightly rotated design alignment relative to the obverse, off by about 15 degrees, which is far beyond normal mint tolerance, giving it an immediately noticeable tilt when the coin is flipped from front to back. And while any one of these anomalies, wrong planchet, triple die obverse, rotated reverse, would be enough to make a coin highly collectible, the fact that they all occur on a single 1945 wheat penny makes it an absolute unicorn in the field. And then comes the matter of condition, which is nothing short of miraculous, because the coin has been graded at an astonishing mint state level, with booming original luster, razor-sharp strike details, and no signs of circulation wear, meaning it must have been pulled from the production stream almost immediately after striking, either by a mint employee aware of its unusual characteristics or by a vigilant bank worker or collector who spotted its peculiar look right away, and then carefully preserved it for over 70 years, protecting it from even the smallest scratch or blemish, and by the time it finally surfaced in the numismatic market, authenticated and encapsulated by one of the top grading services, the buzz was instantaneous, with major collectors, high-profile investors, and even museums taking interest, because a coin like this isn't just rare, it's singular, the kind of piece you can confidently say has no true equal in the known world, and when it crossed the auction block, the atmosphere was electric, with each bid climbing higher as seasoned collectors recognized that missing out meant possibly never seeing it offered again in their lifetimes, and the competition was fierce, 2 or 3 determined bidders pushing the price into the stratosphere until the hammer finally fell at $7 million, a number that made headlines in mainstream media and sent shockwaves through the collecting community, inspiring a new wave of interest in wheat pennies and mint errors from both seasoned numismatists and newcomers. And as with the other legendary pennies, the exact backstory of how this coin came to exist is still the subject of speculation and debate, with theories ranging from an intentional mint test strike using non-standard planchets to an accidental blending of leftover metals from war-era experimental runs, to the possibility of a mint worker deliberately setting aside an unusual piece as a curiosity. But regardless of the origin, the result is the same: a coin that combines historical significance, extreme minting anomalies, flawless preservation, and unparalleled rarity into a single compact artifact, the perfect storm that fuels both the passion and the economics of numismatics. And its sale is a vivid reminder that even in the most studied and seemingly ordinary series of coins, there can still be discoveries that defy expectations, rewrite value records, and ignite imaginations, proving once again that the humble wheat penny, born as a workhorse of daily commerce, can, under the right circumstances, transcend its face value by millions of times, becoming not just a collectible but a piece of living history and an enduring symbol of the beauty that can emerge from imperfection.